My name is Emily Carrington, and what I'm about to share with you isn't just a story. It's not a dream or something I made up to feel special. This happened to me, for real, on the morning of September 8th, 2017, right outside my hometown of Oak Ridge, Tennessee. I'll never forget that day because it was supposed to be like any other. I had just gotten off a double shift at the care facility where I work as a hospice nurse. I was running on fumes, barely awake, just trying to make it home. I remember the roads were still damp from the night before. Everything felt kind of heavy, you know? Like the sky was pressing down, but I thought maybe that was just my exhaustion. I don't even remember the crash itself. One minute I was blinking through the windshield fog, and the next, there was nothing. Not darkness, not silence, just nothing. When I came to, I wasn't in my body. I could see my car crushed against a guardrail. I could see the paramedics arriving. I could even see my own lifeless body inside the wreck, my hands slumped, head tilted, eyes half open but gone. And I didn't feel scared. That's what surprised me the most. I always thought death would come with panic or regret or chaos. But there was none of that. Just peace, this thick, warm peace that wrapped around me like a blanket that had been waiting all my life to hold me. I wasn't floating above the scene like a ghost in a movie. It was more like I was the scene. I could feel everything, the rain falling, the air moving, the hum of the engines, the thoughts of the medics. I had become part of it all, and somehow I knew that I was dead and I was okay with it. But it didn't stop there. In what felt like seconds, but also stretched beyond time, I was pulled upward or maybe inward. It's hard to explain. It wasn't a place you could travel to with footsteps or even a direction you could point toward. It was like my soul was being drawn to something, like how a sunflower tilts towards sunlight, and I couldn't resist it, nor did I want to. Everything around me faded into this glow, an overwhelming radiance that wasn't just light, but love itself. I could feel it before I saw anything. I mean, really feel it. Every molecule of my being started to buzz with a sense of homecoming I didn't even know I'd been missing my whole life. The colors around me weren't like earthly colors. They were alive. They pulsed and sang and wrapped themselves around me like they knew me. And then, standing in the very center of it all, was him. I didn't need anyone to tell me. I didn't need proof. I knew it was Jesus. Not because he looked like a painting or a Sunday school figure. There was no halo, no grand entrance. He was just there. And yet his presence swallowed up everything else. It was him by his essence, by the way my entire being knelt before him without even trying. The second I saw him, I collapsed into something between laughter and weeping. Every part of me trembled, not in fear, but in holy recognition. And the love. Oh God, the love. It didn't come from his eyes or his hands, it came from him. He was love in a form that a human heart could barely survive. If I'd stayed in that moment another second, I think my spirit would have exploded from joy. And yet, he made me feel held, like he was containing my soul gently so I could receive what came next. He didn't speak to me like we speak to each other. His words weren't sounds. They were like perfect downloads of truth straight into my heart. When he spoke, I instantly knew what he meant, what he felt, and what I needed to understand. He looked at me, and I mean truly looked at me, and everything I'd ever been came flooding to the surface. I wasn't ashamed, even though I should have been. He didn't glare at my mistakes or shake his head at my doubts. Instead, he showed me my entire life, every joy, every heartbreak, every moment I chose love, and every moment I didn't. And it wasn't like a movie, it was immersive. I was reliving my own words, feeling the emotions of people I'd spoken to, both the good and the bad. There was a time when I had been short with a woman at the pharmacy who was clearly hurting, and I had just brushed past her because I was in a hurry. I felt her disappointment, her quiet loneliness, like it was my own skin. Then he showed me a moment when I stayed late with a dying patient, holding her hand so she wouldn't pass alone, and I felt the peace that came over her. Every action had meaning, every single one. I started to realize that we live so distracted, always racing, always guarding ourselves, when what actually matters are the small, hidden moments when we choose kindness, compassion, forgiveness. And still, he didn't accuse me. He didn't lecture me. He grieved with me for the chances I'd missed, for the people I'd hurt without meaning to. He loved me through it all, like a father whose heart breaks watching a child fall, but still reaches out to catch them anyway. And then came the part one never expected, the part that still shakes me when I think about it. Jesus told me he was going to show me something, not about my past, but about what's coming. He said there were events approaching that would change the world, not in decades, but in months. And then I was taken somewhere else. The light changed. It got more intense, sharper, like it wanted me to really pay attention. I was standing somewhere that felt like everywhere and nowhere, like the earth, but elevated. And what I saw, I still have trouble putting it into words. It wasn't just visions, it was knowing. It was being inside the events. He showed me June 2025, not a date on a calendar, but a window in time where a series of spiritual and physical shifts would begin. I could feel them, the way thunder rolls before lightning strikes. The first thing I witnessed was something happening in the sky. People were outside, all over the world, looking up in awe and confusion. Some were crying, some praying, some running. There was something cosmic taking place. It wasn't just science, it was divine. A signal, a heavenly announcement that the world had entered a season of reckoning. Not punishment, but correction. A mercy designed to awaken the hearts that had fallen asleep. And I knew, deep in my spirit, that nothing would ever be the same again after that moment. The next vision came so quickly, it was like I blinked and everything around me had changed. The sky that had just held that great cosmic sign was now darkening. It wasn't like nightfall, it was more like a thick spiritual heaviness was descending across the earth. Jesus was still beside me, not saying anything now, but his presence alone told me this was not to be taken lightly. I saw people around the world grappling with confusion and unrest. Governments weren't able to keep control. Leaders didn't know what to say. People were glued to their phones, televisions, radios, trying to understand what was happening, but none of their usual sources had answers. I saw protests erupting, not for politics, but because of fear. It was as if humanity had suddenly realized that the things we had built our lives on, our systems, our science, our independence, were fragile. In some places, the land itself began to tremble. I saw cities shaking, power grids failing, water rushing into places it had no business being. But through all of this, there was something even more terrifying, a spiritual shaking. People's hearts were being exposed. All the anger, the pride, the hatred we'd buried beneath busyness and convenience, it started surfacing. People were lashing out, turning on one another, blaming God, blaming each other. But there were also people, in the midst of this chaos, falling to their knees. I watched as thousands, millions even, dropped in the streets, in their homes, on mountaintops and alleyways, begging for forgiveness, reaching for a God they'd long denied or ignored. And Jesus whispered to me, not audibly, but in that same pure way that carried no confusion, "This is the shaking before the harvest. What came next was unlike anything I've ever experienced. It wasn't destruction. It wasn't chaos. It was beauty, breathtaking, heart-shattering beauty. I saw what looked like flames, but they didn't burn. They danced through people's homes, hearts, churches, even prisons. These were the flames of awakening. A fire not meant to destroy, but to illuminate. Jesus showed me people waking up in the middle of the night, gasping for breath, tears streaming down their faces, because they had encountered him in a dream so real they thought they had died too. People who had once mocked him, cursed his name, taught others to deny him, suddenly they were undone, broken, transformed. And not because someone preached at them, but because God himself reached down into their private darkness and called their names. I saw children preaching in playgrounds, teenagers speaking with wisdom that didn't belong to their age, elderly people who had lived entire lives of bitterness suddenly glowing with peace. This wave didn't care about race, gender, politics, money, or denomination. It swept across every culture, every language, every corner of the world. I saw mosques turn into houses of prayer. I saw atheists holding Bibles, trembling. I saw entire families baptized in kitchen sinks and bathtubs. I watched as love, the real kind, the divine kind, began spreading like wildfire. And still, not everyone welcomed it. There were those who laughed, who clung tighter to their anger and disbelief, who cursed God even more loudly. But the line was becoming clear: the wheat and the tares, the sheep and the goats. Jesus didn't say this, but somehow I just knew it was the fulfillment of something ancient, something written long ago, now finally coming to pass. As these awakenings unfolded, there was a moment, brief but unforgettable, where everything went still. I mean, completely still. Like time itself took a breath. Jesus turned to me then, and for the first time since showing me all this, his expression changed. There was sorrow in his eyes, but also urgency. The pause is coming, he told me. And what follows depends on what is chosen. I didn't understand at first, but then I saw it. This moment when every person alive would be given a chance to choose. Not in the traditional sense of a church altar call or a sermon, but a deep, spiritual crossroads that would rise up inside each person's heart. In their thoughts, in their dreams, in their quiet moments, each person would know. They would feel it. A divine invitation pressing gently but firmly against the door of their soul. And this pause, it was merciful. It was a gift. But it wouldn't last. After it passed, the window would close. Not as punishment, but as the natural end of a season. Like when autumn gives way to winter, it just comes. I saw some people make the choice for light, for truth, for God. And they were filled with such radiance, such peace. Even in suffering, even when the world outside was still wild, they were anchored. They began helping others, leading, praying, healing. But those who turned away, I can barely talk about it. Their eyes went dull, like something had shut off inside. Not because they were hated or rejected, but because they had rejected too many times. They had silenced the voice for so long, they no longer heard it. It was like the light had been offered over, and finally, it just stepped back. Then came the moment that still gives me chills, even now, years later. Jesus looked at me, and I felt everything stop. He said, "You have to tell them. Not to scare them, but to prepare them." And just like that, I was falling, not through space, but through awareness, through spirit, through time. The next thing I knew, I was gasping in a hospital bed. My mom, my sister Hannah, and a nurse were all there, crying, grabbing my hands, thanking God. I had been gone for nearly 5 minutes. No heartbeat, no breath. Dead. But I came back, and the doctors had no explanation for it. They said it was a miracle, and I agreed, but it wasn't just the fact that I lived. The real miracle was what I had been shown. The weight of it didn't hit me until days later, when the visions wouldn't stop replaying in my mind. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't function like before. Everything had changed. I saw people differently. I felt time differently. I couldn't go back to my old life, pretending like nothing happened. God had shown me the heartbeat of the world, its pain, its potential, its coming shift, and I knew I had to speak. Even if people didn't believe me, even if they called me crazy. I had seen too much, felt too much, known too much to stay silent. The world was heading toward a divine collision, a reckoning of love and truth, and every soul mattered in the outcome. The days after I came back were some of the strangest, most emotionally overwhelming days I've ever lived through. People kept telling me how lucky I was, how miraculous it was that I survived that wreck with no permanent brain damage, no broken bones, no long-term complications. The doctors kept shaking their heads, saying things like, "We don't see this. This just doesn't happen." I smiled. I thanked them. I nodded along, but inside, I was breaking. Not in a bad way, but in a way that nothing in this world had prepared me for. I wasn't afraid. I wasn't traumatized by the accident. It wasn't PTSD or anything like that. It was the ache. That deep, wordless ache of knowing that I had touched eternity, and now I was back in a world that felt faded by comparison. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same. My own house felt unfamiliar, too small. Music didn't sound right anymore. Food didn't taste the same. I kept looking at people, strangers at the grocery store, neighbors walking their dogs, even my own family, and I kept thinking, you have no idea how close the kingdom is. You think this life is everything, but it's just the first page of a book we haven't even started reading yet. I didn't want to tell people right away. I was scared they'd think I was hallucinating. But the more time passed, the more the weight of what I'd seen pressed into my chest. It wasn't optional. This was a commission, and keeping silent started to feel like disobedience. I started writing things down late at night, waking up at 2 or 3 in the morning with words burning in my spirit. I'd write on notepads, the backs of receipts, even my own arms when I couldn't find paper fast enough. I'd hear words like awakening, purification, watch the skies, the pause, and I'd scribble them down without even knowing why. I didn't know if it was prophecy or trauma or something else entirely, but it wouldn't stop. I didn't want to make a spectacle out of it. I didn't want to exploit the beauty of what I had seen just to get attention. But eventually, I couldn't keep quiet. It started with my church. My pastor, who had always been more skeptical of things like this, sat me down one Sunday afternoon and just listened. For over 2 hours, I poured everything out to him. The moment I mentioned June 2025, he leaned forward like I'd shocked him. "You're the third person to say that this month," he whispered. That's when I knew. This wasn't just for me. God was stirring hearts all over the world, whispering the same message in different languages, through different people, all pointing to the same time frame. It wasn't a date for fear, it was a season for preparation. A season for realignment. The months that followed were humbling. People started asking me to speak, to share my testimony. But I wasn't trying to become a speaker or a prophet or anything like that. I just wanted people to know how loved they are. I wanted them to see how real eternity is, and how near we are to a shift that will wake the world up in a way it has never seen. One of the hardest things to deal with was how isolated I sometimes felt. When you come back from something like this, you don't fit in the same way anymore. Conversations about the weather or television or gossip just feel empty. It's not that I think I'm better than anyone, it's just that I've seen what matters now. I've stood in front of the Savior of the world and watched him grieve over how many of us are chasing distractions while eternity waits at the door. I remember going to a family barbecue about 3 months after the accident. Everyone was laughing, joking, drinking sweet tea, and catching up. But I couldn't stop watching the sky. It was blue, cloudless, just like in the vision. I kept thinking, is this how it starts? On a day like this? My cousin asked me what was wrong, and I almost told her. But then I saw the look in her eyes, the kind of look people get when they're not ready to hear something that might wreck their sense of peace. And that's when I realized something else Jesus had shown me, but I hadn't fully understood until then. Not everyone will be ready when the time comes. Some people are so wrapped up in the illusion of control, the illusion of time, that even when signs are given to them, they'll explain them away. They'll label it a coincidence, a conspiracy, a natural disaster, anything but what it really is. And my job wasn't to force them. My job was to plant the seed, to bear witness, and to let the Spirit do the rest. The real turning point for me came one night in prayer. I had been crying like ugly crying because I felt so burdened by the weight of what I'd seen. I didn't know how to live in this world with the memory of that other one burning in my chest every second of every day. I asked God, why me? Why did you show me all this and send me back? And as clearly as I've ever heard him, I felt these words in my spirit, because they'll listen to you. You're not famous. You're not a preacher. You're just Emily. You're real. You're broken. And they need someone like you to tell them the truth. I just broke down. It felt like my heart cracked wide open, and everything I had been holding back came spilling out. That night, I made a promise. I would speak no matter the cost. I would share even if only one person believed me. I would risk being misunderstood, laughed at, labeled crazy, because if even one heart turned back to God because of my story, it would be worth it. Every single tear, every single awkward conversation, every single night spent staring at the ceiling wondering what June 2025 would bring, it would all be worth it. Because this isn't about me. It never was. It's about what's coming. And whether the world is ready or not, God is preparing the stage. The light is moving. The trumpet is being lifted. And the question we all have to answer is, will we recognize the call when it comes? Time kept moving, and as it did, the world began to shift in ways that made what I saw feel less like a dream and more like a roadmap. I started noticing signs, not always dramatic, but unmistakable. People who never talked about God before were suddenly asking me deep questions. Friends who used to laugh off faith were having vivid dreams, seeing things they couldn't explain. The news began reporting events that lined up: eclipses, solar storms, tremors under cities that had been quiet for centuries. It was subtle, but if you had eyes to see and ears to hear, you could feel the ground of reality shifting. Even secular voices began saying things like, "We're headed for something big," or "Humanity is approaching a tipping point." And every time I heard those words, I'd feel that same pull in my chest, like Jesus was gently nudging me to remember what I'd seen. I'd be sitting in my living room folding laundry, and the Spirit would whisper, "Tell them again. Keep telling them." It wasn't about doom or fear. God wasn't calling me to preach fire and brimstone. He was calling me to be a lighthouse. And lighthouses don't scream at ships, they shine. They stay rooted and bright so that when the storm hits, the lost know where to look. That became my life's mission after I came back, to shine, quietly but boldly, so that anyone out there sailing in the dark might see the light and turn toward it before the storm overtakes them. But I need to tell you something very personal now, something I don't always include when I talk about this, but I feel like you need to hear it. This experience didn't make my life easier. It didn't turn me into some super Christian. If anything, it made things harder at first. I wrestled with loneliness, anxiety, and even depression for a while. You don't just see eternity and then walk back into regular life without a struggle. There were nights when I lay awake with tears streaming down my face, begging God to take me back, asking Him why He would show me the door to paradise and then send me back into a world full of noise, sin, and pain. But each time, He answered me not with anger, but with purpose. He reminded me that love doesn't abandon people in the storm. Love goes out into it. Love speaks when others are silent. Love kneels beside the hurting and whispers, "You're not forgotten." And that's what I've tried to do ever since. I talk to strangers in waiting rooms. I pray over the phone with old friends I haven't spoken to in years. I walk slower, listen deeper, forgive faster. Not because I'm holy or special, but because I've seen what's waiting for those who choose love. And I've seen the heartbreak of those who keep running from it. The harvest is coming, and we don't have time to waste on bitterness, division, or spiritual sleep. Every soul matters. Every moment is sacred. And we need to start living like that, not next year, not when we feel ready, but now. So here's what I want to say to you. Whoever you are, wherever you are, whether you're full of faith or running on fumes, you're not hearing this by accident. You didn't stumble on this video just because the algorithm served it to you. I believe God is calling out to you through my voice right now. Not because I'm special, but because He is. If you feel that stirring in your heart, that tug that says, "This is real," pay attention, don't ignore it. Don't wait until the shaking starts to look up. Jesus is offering you the same peace, the same forgiveness, the same love He showed me. And He's offering it freely, fully, and right now. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to clean yourself up before coming to Him. Just come. Just open the door. Just say His name. And if you've already said yes to Him, then let this be a reminder. You're here for a reason. There are people only you can reach. Stories only you can tell. Prayers only you can pray. Don't let fear hold you back from walking in your purpose. Don't let comfort lull you to sleep. Rise. Shine. Be the light. Because time is shorter than we think, and the days ahead will require courage, clarity, and compassion like never before. June 2025 is not just a date, it's a turning point. I don't know every detail of what will happen, and I won't pretend to. I'm not here to sell a prophecy. I'm here to offer a testimony. I saw what I saw. I felt what I felt. And I came back changed forever. You can choose to believe me or not. That part is up to you. But I urge you with all my heart, seek Him for yourself. Ask Jesus to show you what's real. Open your Bible. Fall on your knees. Look at the world with new eyes. Because He's not hiding, He's waiting. And I believe with every fiber of my being that the next chapter of this world will be written by those who said yes when it mattered most. I pray you'll be one of them. And if you already are, then let's not just believe. Let's live it. Let's love recklessly. Forgive relentlessly. Shine unashamedly. And prepare not with panic, but with power. Because we are the generation that will see the heavens shake. We are the generation that will witness the divine move in ways the world cannot explain. And when the pause comes, may we all be found ready. Thank you for watching my story, and if it spoke to your heart in any way, I'd be honored if you'd share it with someone else. Not for views, not for likes, but because someone out there needs to hear this. Maybe it's your friend, your child, your coworker. Maybe it's you. If you want to hear more stories like this, or if you're searching and don't know where to start, subscribe and walk this journey with us. There's more to come. And most of all, remember this: Jesus is real. Heaven is real, and your soul is worth everything.